Shooter, big deer. I can't believe that just happened. The dead deer. He dropped right where we had him. Yes! Oh my gosh. Holy crap. The great Hambino right here. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Fall Podcast. Today is episode 2 of the season 23, and we've got a lot to catch up on. We've been scouting. David's been scouting a lot. I've been able to get out a couple times, but we figured, we kind of hinted on this last time, but when I did season 22, it was like real time that day kind of deal. This is within the last couple days, where it's just scout so much, it's just hard to do an episode every day, so I think this one you scouted a couple days ago, I did as well. I did a whole bunch of work on the 1 acre, so this will just be a kind of a culmination leading up to today and what we've noticed and what we've seen and what we've done. So I think that's just kind of how we're going to roll this off season until we get into the season, and when we are in the fall, it'll be day-to-day updates for sure.
Yeah. During this off-season time, all the scouting we're doing, it's to do an episode every time, sometimes it wouldn't be like a whole lot of content there, right?
Right.
Because not every scouting day is equal. There is no bad days of scouting, but there's a lot of times where, day A and day B of scouting, they provide two different, things of content or, information-wise.
Yeah, for sure. And that's another thing. We want the content to be relevant for one thing, but we also want it to be engaging. So, when you go out and put boots on the ground and you might find a couple of rubs, and it's like, well, everybody finds rubs when they go scouting. So it's like, is there engaging things that we can talk about? And maybe there is. Maybe you find a big shed under a rub. I don't know. But yeah, that's just trying to stay engaging with it and keep everybody interested. And the biggest thing what you and I wanted to do, not with just this, but the podcast in general, is just stay relevant. We want to be relevant or relatable, not relevant. I'm sorry, relatable. Relatable to everybody out there, and what we're doing. And I think we're doing a good job of it. A lot of good feedback still coming. The Andy May podcast from a couple days ago. Wow. Holy cow. I don't know what you've been hearing from people, but it's an overwhelming shout out of love on that podcast. That was a good one.
Yeah, that was a really good one. And like we said in the intro of that one, that, people were going to see a little bit different side of Andy, because he's human too,
Yep.
and you can always tell, even with Andy at the level he's at, he's still a student of the game, learning from those mistakes or, those mishaps during the season.
Yeah, for sure. That's you nailed it right there, because that was the conversation we wanted to have with him and try to see that vulnerable side, but because he's human just like everybody else out there, So today's podcast, like I said, season 23, episode 2 of it. Today is February 17th, Friday. Good day. Some snow. I've got some snow here in Michigan. I don't know. I was hoping we weren't going to, because we just lost all the snow a couple days ago. So I'm like trying to get back out and do some more scouting. But a little bit of snow on the ground, so hopefully it won't stay. But today's episode is going to be brought to you by Latitude Outdoors. And if you guys go to latitudeoutdoors.com and use the code thefallpodcast, all one word, you can save 25% on any accessories, any Classic 2 saddles, anything that you're looking to upgrade, stuff like that, ropes and maybe some carabiners or even gear straps. That's one thing. Like, we're going to get into some more podcasts on gear and our gear, but like that gear strap last year to me was like awesome. I don't want to get too far to the weeds, but that thing, like, is as little as it is, it served a big purpose,
Yeah, it's almost like a multi-tool,
It
because
is. Yep.
you probably used it more than just, as a bow hanger as a backpack hanger or as a GoPro hanger. Like that thing's
Hmm.
like a Swiss Army knife up there in the tree.
It really is, yeah. So go to Latitude Outdoors, check those out. Also, the stick pre-order is still going on, so go there and pre-order the sticks. And you want to do that because they're going to be shipping them in the order they received the pre-orders. So go do that. All right, let's get into today's podcast topics. Let's start with you real quick, and kind of get it. You've been scouting a lot. You found a really good buck dead the other day.
Hmm.
That's a heartbreaker. Number 5 of the year. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Number 5 of the year. It's last year I found 8 deadheads, and out of the 8, I believe there was 1.5 year old. I had like 3 2.5 year olds. No, maybe a couple more than that. Then 1 or 2 3 year olds, and last year after finding 8, I was my buddies were always be like, yeah, that's an anomaly finding that many in 1 year. But here we are, kind of only a month and a half of off season or postseason scouting, and I'm already at 5 this year. So I'm kind of worried that I'm probably going to break that mark again this year.
Man, that's brutal. That really is
Yeah.
brutal. And you and I talked about extensively on the phone the other day about you really didn't think that you had many deer that were made it through. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So you're kind of like hoping that there's going to be something to chase next year, which it seems like every year there usually is. Like
Yeah.
I've had years where it's like, man, every deer got shot, and then all of a sudden just one shows up, and you're like, wow, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
where have you been?
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things where it's always nice, like kind of rolling into January, and then throughout the off season, knowing like if you had a handful of bucks that made it. And I've had those years, and that's always a great feeling. Where this year, I mean, you and I had that discussion where it's like, yeah, I lost a lot of deer this year, a
Yep.
lot of deer this year, and but there's always this concept where it's like new bucks show up every summer, and it's like they just come out of the woodwork sometimes. And I think they shift a little bit, especially that 2 to 3 year old range are shifting, and sometimes luckily it's back into like areas that I can hunt. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to lose some too. But yeah, when you know how many you lost during gun season, and then you're finding this amount of dead bucks every year, it's just tough, and it's really tough to get them to an older age class when you're losing, you're a lot of your prime young ones.
Yeah, you and I are on like totally ends of the spectrum, different ends. Because I've got some good deer that made it through.
Yeah.
Some deer that I was going to shoot last year, and
Mhm.
they're still alive, today. Like
Yep.
I, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you do, and I'm really excited. You're gonna have a nice nice crop of bucks going in the summertime, but that's a little bit of the flip side of hoping a new one shows up, or like you're just hoping that they actually stay. Or
Yeah.
like I think you and I you're somewhere around that 3 to 4 bucks that have probably made it, where it's like in my mind, if I could get half those bucks to stay, it'd probably be a good summer.
Yep. Yeah. So in my scenario, I have 6 bucks that made it through, 6 rack bucks. One that I was going to shoot last year, one that was borderline, and the other one was like, please make it through. Please make it through.
Yeah.
And they all did. I went on a scouting mission the other day and was able to glass them from the road and got footage of these deer. Still, all of them are still holding both sides. And so my evenings have been going back to that location and glassing every night. And they are like clockwork right now. And
Mhm.
I'm just waiting for them to drop their antlers so I can go pick them up, hopefully. um, that kind of leans into like my first question. I got a question for you. You know,
Okay.
if you have that situation, there's a group of about 20 deer. They're all yarded up, and you can see some of them are shed already. Um, are you waiting for like, okay, if you have like a group of 20 deer and like each day that you're seeing them shed possibly, are you waiting for all of them to shed before you go in there and start bumping them around possibly, or are you going in and just trying to scoop them up like when you have time?
Well, I guess if I was in that situation that you're sitting in, and with time, always on the back of my mind is, the deer on my wall is probably always more important than the shed sitting on the fireplace, right? So, like, the
Mm-hmm.
scouting is always a lot more important to me than just finding some sheds. But this is why I always think it's very important to have, multiple options. When I say options, I mean properties. So let's say property A, you have, 3 or 4 bucks that you're like, man, I would love to find those sheds. And you can kind of just let them sit on that and spend your time scouting something else. And so that's probably what I would do is if it was a pretty high priority to me about finding those sheds, I would just let those deer be probably until probably sometime in March, the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of March, the mid March. But I also wouldn't be sitting around just waiting for that. I would be headed to different properties. I'd be door knocking. I would still be doing something out there in the woods that, make my time valuable, but also letting those bucks just kind of sit there, do their thing, hopefully shed. Hopefully I can pick those up maybe a month from now.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I mean, I've been scouting where I've done most of my scouting has been on a farm that like I really don't care if I do bump them in a way. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the farm that these deer are on, it was a new farm that I picked up last year, and it's kind of a drive. So it's like, I'm just kind of. It's easier to let it be. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And just the my one farm that I'm scouting, like I don't get to see deer every day out there like holding antlers. So that's maybe it's a little bit of a head game there too. Like, okay, I don't see like a deer out there that I'm waiting to shed. Like, okay, like maybe it's just I'm just gonna go scout, and if there is one there, I'm gonna bump him around, I guess. But I will say where I am scouting, um, when I do bump deer there, they're not gonna go very far. Now, the new farm I have where the deer are, I don't want to bump them out of there because they could run for 4 miles.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
different terrain.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just kind of, knowing about the deer you're talking about and where they're at. I mean, I would probably, honestly, I'd just be sitting on it right now. And you
Hmm.
have other stuff. You can go scout, you know what I mean? Go learn. But yeah, is this probably one of the rare opportunities you've had that there's a high probability of being able to scoop? We're not talking one or two sheds. There's a good chance of scooping like, hey, you may have a personal best day in a month from now.
This is the first year. I mean, that's why I'm so geeked. Like that's why I make the
Yeah.
drive to go and look at the field every night that I can, because I don't get this scenario all the time. Like I watched a video last night on YouTube of Lee Lakoski. Like he did a video of him shed hunting with his family and everything. It was 20 minutes, and he's picking up the one shed he found was like 93-inch side, and it's his
Mm.
next 200. And I'm like, geez, like that'd be just so much fun just to walk out and I don't even care if I keep them, just like scoop them up. I've got a buddy, Mitch Reitz, he sent me Snapchats last night. He found 3 last night, and like I think it's like really cool. And last weekend it was really nice here, and Peyton and I went out one day, and she found one the first day, and then the second day my wife came out with us, and Peyton found another one in our field. At our family farm, and I'm like, that was really cool. And like Peyton, like her eyes just lit up, you know what I mean? And it was just like, this is so cool. And then we got into talking about how we're scouting for next year, and then so now that's what she's telling all of her friends at school is like, we went scouting to know where we can hunt for next year. Like that's what she's saying. And I'm like, she's just latching onto it. So that's really cool because I never got that opportunity. Like shed hunting wasn't a thing back then when we were 5. Like, you know,
Yeah.
um, so it's just
Like you,
exciting to see like where I could have a possibility to go scoop some up.
yeah, yeah. So like it's almost like you have a feeling that you're actually going to be able to participate in shed rally this year.
Well, maybe, yeah.
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 Well,
I'm
you
not
know,
I'm not the
and
guy that likes to go out and just plant sheds to take pictures for IG. I'm not that guy.
shots fired. Here we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, no kidding.
But it almost sounds like it's in a month from now when you want to go look for those sheds, maybe it shouldn't be you looking for them. Maybe it should be Peyton looking for those.
Yeah, it's because I'm a terrible shed hunter. I cannot see them. And my biggest problem is, like, when I'm out shed hunting, I've got to be in a field because if I'm not, I'm like this. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
what am I
You
looking like? I don't look for
you turn
deer
to
or
scouting.
yeah, it's scouting and I can't flip my brain to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's it's probably I'm the same way, right? Like 10 years ago I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna go shed hunting, and it's not like I find much. Where it's like now it's like, no, I'm not going shed hunt. I'm just gonna go scouting, and I scout so much where it's like I'm gonna bump into a shed sooner or later. But it's like I think that's just we're just a product of our environment. It's not like shed hunting in Michigan is phenomenal. People
mhm.
don't come here to go shed hunting.
Right. Yep, for sure. Yeah, so moving on a little bit here, the notes. So the shed hunting, those I want to ask you about that. What do you got next on your docket? Do you have anything
Oh, yeah, yeah. I got a couple points here. Nothing's gonna be groundbreaking. Some of the stuff is just always a good reminder, just to get other people and myself. The one day I went scouting, and if people always see, if they think like, man, David scouts a lot, you got to remember, I don't get like full day of scouting trips in. I get a lot of 2 to 4 hour trips. So like if I have that 2 to 4 hour trip, like I have things planned in my head where it's like, say for instance, what this first point I'm gonna hit. I knew in that 2 to 4 hour trip I wanted to hit 3 different properties, but I picked 3 small properties. And when I say small, these all 3 of these properties are about 40 acres or less. Some are
mhm.
quite a bit less than 40 acres, and some are right about that. So the one day I picked the three properties, 40 acres or less, and at the end of the day, I found something pretty, like, in my mind. I was thinking about how my day went, and that's kind of what we all do, I think, at the end of a day scouting. And when we're walking out or driving home, like you feel really good about that day. Like, man, I can't wait to get back in there, or I can't wait to like look back at the map and see how it played out. But what was running through my head was, if the average guy, if I sent everyone an aerial photo of all 3 properties and I told you to rank them from best to worst, and you label them 1, 2, and 3. Well, after scouting them, they were actually the complete opposite of that. So,
Okay.
like what looked like the worst from like an aerial view image was actually the best. When I say the best, like it showed the best sign in there. And at the end of the day, when I was thinking about that, instantly I'm like, well, why is that? It's because of the human pressure that's happening on what looks to be the best piece, right? That's and these are all properties that every other people can hunt too, right?
Mhm.
And so sometimes it's like that reminder of, just because it's the best looking piece of property, from Google Earth does not mean it's going to show the best deer hunting sign in there. So that was always that's a good reminder, to everyone and myself. It's like, don't judge a book by its cover, basically. And the next thing was, after the kind of that trip, and that showed some good, that, like I said, the worst looking property had some pretty good sign. And while I was there, like, I'm a big advocate for, like, if I'm gonna run trail cameras, I want to do a damn good job at it. So I'm also like prepping trail camera locations
Sure.
right now, like, because when I go back in there in July and August to hang a camera, I want to just hang a camera and get out of there. So like, I'm gonna really, make sure that anything I can get out of the way now, I'm gonna do that. So in July and August, it's minimal presence in there, basically.
Mhm.
So I did prep one trail camera location and the one piece, and then like I found a spot that I would possibly sit. We'll see what the trail camera shows. But the next piece I kind of rolled into a few days later. A snowstorm had come through. And this particular piece, I know that like deer use it kind of all year round, and it's probably one of the only pieces I have in Michigan that has some like true topography to it. And it's not a lot, but it's enough that, I've had the property for 2 years, that what little bit I've been on it, that I was starting to see like, okay, I think these deer are actually using this property more of the topography than they are the actual cover.
Okay.
Which is the opposite of what a lot of my properties are. A lot of my properties are cover-based movement, kind of, that inside that security cover, how they move from point A to point B type of thing. And I've kind of been sitting on that property waiting for some snow. And a lot of guys, they want to wait till the snow is gone, and I do too. Like, that's my favorite. But I knew with the snow, and there's a pretty high number of deer that use it, and there is a good buck that uses it. Like, he's a shooter this year. He should be one next year. Well, I knew once we got snow, if I would wait a week and let those deer really hammer down that property, how they're using it, that I could go out there and just kind of backtrack all the trails through there and just watch and learn how they are using them. Walk all those trails, and sure enough, like, they are using what little bit of topography changes on that piece of property. They are using that 100%. And I sent you some videos, and they're not only are they, using that topography change for, movement, but they are, there's some heavy bedding on there too, like
Yeah.
extremely heavy bedding on there. But there is a lot of deer though right now in there too. So that's one good point. And there was a chance for maybe a good shed. But that was like, I weighed my options there, where it's like I knew I really been waiting for that snow to be able to walk those trails. So, I knew that he probably wasn't shed yet, possibly, but it was more important for me to go learn the trail system out there, than actually finding that shed.
When
So that
real quick, when you
go ahead.
find those beds, what is that telling you right now? Is that viable information for you right now for next fall, or how do you put that information in your memory bank, and how do you make it to where it can benefit you for next year?
Yeah. Well, the particular bedding on that property right now, you could tell is just straight wintertime bedding, like stuff that
Yep.
they're not going to bed in the summertime. They're not going to bed in the fall. But like, there was one instance out there where I found like one, isolated bed up out of a swamp, like down this ridge, down into a swamp, where it's like you could tell like that was a buck laying there. I can't tell you the size or the caliber of the buck, but you could tell like he was even laying there right now in the winter time, where it's like, yeah, he's probably laying there quite a bit. But
Mm-hmm.
some of that stuff, you could just feel the sun shining down in there, so it's like it made a lot of sense for
Yep.
why they were bedding there. But even though, like, they're not getting human pressure right now, they are, I knew where they were feeding at night, and it's on a completely different property, where it's like they were traveling a quarter to half a mile from this, particular woodlot to this food source. Like, they're still traveling a long ways away, and it just verifies that they actually feel pretty damn safe inside that cover where they were bedding. So
That's a good
yeah,
clip
I
for
mean,
traveling every night right now.
yeah, it's a really good clip. And around here, over the last few years, I really noticed that like the deer will travel long ways away, because some of that travel may be across open fields. So then obviously they're not just bedding
Right.
in those open fields. At least not during the day. At night they will. You ever turn a corner on a intersection of a road, and you see all those eyes out there just laying down, where they're just
Yep.
they're on their feet, they're on their belly all night long, but
Yep.
yeah, it's something to always put in the memory bank. But I just know that during the fall that those aren't all exact bedding locations.
Mm-hmm.
But then kind of just rolled in, to another day of scouting. Scouted a really small piece, and this is the second smallest piece I have permission on. I'm not going to say exactly how small the piece is, because um, it's tiny, but it also has the potential for the biggest deer, maybe the two biggest deer that I know of in Michigan, that should be around next year. And I wish I could scout so much more. But
I
the
know.
one thing I do, I look at the map, and this is the point, is I look at the map and I wish I could scout so much more, but I can't. I I've done everything I've done. I've already knocked on more doors this year, and I'm going to actually circle back to the door knocking thing here in a second. But I just want to hit on, even though this is a small acres, I'm just going to say it's less than 20, but it's in such a great neighborhood. And when I say neighborhood, I'm not talking like a subdivision neighborhood. I'm talking like it is in a neighborhood that's holding really high end caliber deer, especially from Michigan. I mean, one or two
Mm-hmm.
of these bucks are nice deer anywhere in the country. Um, so with that piece, I kind of did the same thing. It didn't take much to walk it. I could, it only took me about 3 hours to really pick it apart, but I don't want to have to really go back in there again because unless I get new permission on something surrounding, I already know the thing. So I went ahead and I prepped my trail camera location on a couple crossings, like junctions, and I actually already prepped the tree that I need to be hunting in because I mean, you're very limited out there.
Right.
But yeah, but circling back to that door knocking thing, I was thinking about this the other day that over the last 10 years, I've always kind of made it a goal to I knock on 10 doors a year. And now it's way more than 10, but that was always kind of the base standard is 10. And a lot of times I would get no, but you know what? I swear that since COVID, people don't even answer the door anymore. Like they're so
I
like I don't
bet.
know if they're just scared of me standing out there and like they have no clue. And I understand that they don't know what I'm up there to ask or if they're worried about getting something. But it's like shit. I struggle with just getting people to answer the damn door nowadays. It's like I can take a no, but it's like not answering I can hear your TV. I can hear you guys talking in
Your
there.
lights are
Dogs
on.
barking. Yeah, the lights are on. It's like man, it's just tough to get people to answer the door now.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then after that, I just kind of had one other really big day of scouting, and that was just the other day, and I already knew of this hard transition. This is small painted pictures, big food sources to the north and the south. And real good bedding in between, and just a real long east-west type of transition and I really wanted to walk that with no snow, and not only no snow, but it's not flooded right now, which is very very rare. I mean, you don't even need rubber boots, which is I don't think I've ever seen it like this.
Wow.
But I wanted to walk every break in that transition. When I say break, I mean like all of a sudden the transition goes into the swamp a little bit, or it comes out to on a point a little bit. And I basically was walking every trail in and out of there, but then I was looking to really find where there was junctions in those trails coming out of there. Where like one or two trails were coming together in a Y. North and south trails are eating that, or not eating that, meeting the east and west just on the outside of that transition. And what I found interesting is since it was dry this year, that I was finding a lot of scrapes on those junctions of trails where they were coming together just outside that bedding.
Okay.
And I kind of hope that it's dry again this year because man, there was some good looking scrapes. Like those thumb style size, licking branches that were real twisted up. And even though I've known that of that transition, and I've kind of been like really picking it apart, I actually was able to find like three legitimate spots where it's like you'll probably somewhat be hunting the same movement, but like three different spots along that transition where it's like I would not be afraid to throw a hunt at one of those.
For sure.
And that same day, found a day old shed. Actually, the dog did, and then found it a real nice deadhead, probably a 2.5-year-old 9 point, real nice browse, good mass already. He had made it through bow season. I'm guessing he got killed during gun season, so sometime. But yeah, just really just putting a lot of boots to the ground lately, and doing, like I said, prepping a lot of trail camera locations. When I find those where I'm like, yes, I want to put a camera here for the year-round intel. Like I'm not afraid to prep it right now, and I get it. Where guys may say, "Well, I'm not worried about that till July or August." Where it's like, no, I want my trail camera locations to be pristine. Like if
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna use them and run them, I want them to work for me.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. And that's something that, I've been telling you about. Like, I was going to do it the other day, like build a mock scrape the other day, but there was 2 inches of snow still in the timber where I wanted to do it. And honestly, my plan, I'm going to go back and do it here whenever the snow melts. And I might even do it while the snow is on the ground, just because it was a hard, crusty snow at first, and I really didn't have the tools to do it at the time. But my whole thing is I'm experimenting this year. Like I told you, on the property line on the neighbors, that one scouting trip I did earlier, I found a huge, huge scrape, and it's literally 5 feet off the property line, not on me. So you could
Yep.
walk and you could see it. It was just a beacon right there. I'm experimenting. The deer made that. Okay. I'm experimenting and I'm going to try to pull them and eliminate that scrape by just, I'm not going to obviously trespass or anything, but eliminate it by building a bigger scrape, and one that I'm going to mimic that scrape, same tree, same everything, but on my side, and see if I
Yep.
can pull the deer. A lot of people are like, "Why are you even messing around with that?" I'm like, "Well, because I'm going to try to learn something.
No.
I might fail like a son of a bee. Like deer might not even take it over." But my whole thing is, I want to go back and I want to build a truck hood size scrape under that tree right now. I'm not going to put anything in it, but I'm going to build it so it's like just wow, what is this here? And just get them visually seeing it, and then once, because you know I wish a lot of people could see your cameras and how deer are still right now on February 16th or 17th hitting scrapes. Like not roughing them up or anything, but playing with them, heading them, still playing with the vine, all that thing. Like every day you have pictures of deer doing that, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Every day. I mean, standing up on even like I see this with the fawns a lot. Where like they'll stand up on their hind legs and almost paw at it with their front hoofs. But yeah, it's they don't stop messing with these things. Like they're
No.
constantly smelling them and more important than anything is just the location of them. And I find in these junctions, and I keep talking about a junction. I even on like the mapping apps, I when I drop a waypoint, a lot of times I probably drop more junction waypoints than anything. But yeah, that when you talk about opening up that scraper, it's like I almost feel that the scrapes that I make, that they're so visually like attractive to anything or out in the woods, or maybe not even attractive but almost like curious, or like, what is that, you know what I mean, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like they almost have to come check it out, and once they do, they realize that kind of like their natural instincts kick in of what they're supposed to do to it,
Yeah.
and they just take it over.
Yeah, and you talk about the junction. This spot where I want to put this is in a junction, and there's two main highways that come through here. And what you just said it, what this is what I want to happen. I want fawns and does and whatever right now to come and put their head in it and start putting their scent in it. I just want them to kind of, as they're passing by, like play with it and then move on. Like I just want them to start taking it over, because I feel like this could be a scrape that is there every year and they use it every year. So that's one big thing I'm going to try to learn and do this year. And I'm the same way. Like I'm looking for trail cam locations right now and how I can tweak them. Up where we had the Riley scrape, we know that kind of the coyotes took that over, which was
Hmm.
moved the deer movement about 200 yards to the northwest kind of. And I went back in there and looked at that spot the other day, and yeah, you can definitely see that the deer are funneling around where they used to come, where that Riley scrape was. The coyotes put a den right underneath the camera, right by the scrape. And remember, like we were like, why are like just the coyote activity just like picked up like crazy on camera in there? It was like almost like, man, is there something dead around there? Or and then finally I went and looked at it, and they made a new den 4 feet from the scrape, and it totally turned. I'd get a random doe here or there come through in the middle of the night, no more daylight pictures, and it totally screwed that scrape up. It's the first time I've ever had that happen. So I did check out that new location, and I think I'm going to tweak it a little bit. I don't really like where it's at, because I feel like it's too open. I was going back through my camera pictures last year, and there was 2 days in the latter part of October that I was having shooter bucks show up 2 days in the evening in daylight. Now, historically, that might be something that I look back to next year, in those 2 days to maybe go throw a sit at it. But I think the camera location needs to move probably 80 yards, to be honest with you.
All
So,
right, so let me ask you this: if you have daylight evidence of bucks using this, what like just like is it because of kind of how we were brought up, and then once we started learning more about the big deer in Michigan, that you feel like it needs to be in more security cover? I mean,
yep,
the deer are using it in daylight. I mean,
yep.
that's half that's a major part of the battle right there. Well, what exactly is making you want to move that?
Well, to be honest, it's security cover. I mean, this is the deer desert where this thing is at. It's mature oak ridge that you could hit a 5 iron through this thing and probably maybe clip a tree. Maybe. You know what I mean? It's to me it's we talked about this the other day on a phone call, just like when you cross Michigan state lines, you can hunt a deer desert, in my opinion. You go to Iowa, Kansas, or something where we might be like, it's way too open in here. And you even said, like, you were in Iowa that one year in public and you threw a camera up and you had the same feeling of, like, there's no deer going to hit this scrape. And then, like you said, every day there was a 130 or plus different buck would hit that scrape in daylight. It's just
Hmm.
different. So I just don't. I was getting a lot of bucks on the camera, but I wasn't getting the consistent daylight activity with there not being a ton of pressure around there. I know there wasn't a ton of pressure around there. So I'm like, why? I'm starting to ask myself, why are they here late? Well, the camera and the scrape is too far. Um, I need to backtrack. So we backtracked a little bit the other day and came to a hemlock swamp, which is probably a little bit farther than 80 yards, but I feel like safely I could move 80 yards and start getting into the fringe of that cover, and that's where I'd actually set up. And I think 80 yards adjustment would probably give me just enough time where that deer would come out and he might be staging up in there. And obviously this is for like probably an early October to middle of October timeframe, but I still am looking at as well, how deer can or bucks can use this downwind, check it downwind of does. So I've kind of got a perfect storm. I've got food, destination food, and then Oak Ridge, and like in the middle is where I would put the scrape, but on the east side is the hemlock swamp. So I feel like setting up in the middle there where deer would still be trying to circle downwind of checking the bedding, but also in hindsight, like two, I think they could. Not in hindsight. Don't know why I just said that. But two, I think they could be checking that scrape at the same time. Two birds, one stone, and then I could kind of get them on that loop. That's the way my head's feeling. I don't know, but I'm kind of on that fringe of the cover. I'm not like right on the edge. I can't get on the edge. I feel like those deer are not bedding that far into that swamp, that hemlock swamp.
Yeah.
So
So with the thought of moving that, get a little bit closer to the the cover, then quote unquote probably the bedding area. Are you going to eliminate the one up in the Oaks, or are you going to keep that there?
that's the thing. Like I've thought to myself, like just go cut the branches. It's on private, so I can cut and do whatever. Like cut the branches off to eliminate that scrape right there. But then I'm like, maybe leave it. Don't do anything to it. Make my scrape, doctor it up, do whatever, and see what they prefer, and kind of monitor both. Now that I'm leaning more towards that because I think I can learn something. Let's say this 80-yard adjustment doesn't help. Uh, then I got to figure out why. Maybe 80 yards was too much. Maybe I didn't need to move it. I don't know. But from what everything when I went and pulled that camera, I pulled the card on Sunday. It was Sunday, and I checked it. I put it in the computer and I checked it. And I'm going through it and I'm like, man, there's a lot of bucks on here. And I'm like, but there was only 2 days that there was daylight movement in there on shooter bucks that I was like, okay, it just didn't give me the warm and fuzzies. Like I need to jump in there next year, and really hone in. I felt, but the first thing in my head was like, I got to move. I got to figure something else out.
Hmm.
I don't know. What would
Yeah.
you do? Would you eliminate that scrape?
No, not yet. Not this next year because what I would have a hard why I would have a hard time eliminating it right now is one like you said about learning, but it may actually take me 2, 3, maybe 4 years. You want to know why? Because I would have to be really watching the acorn rotation around there,
Yep.
or like the acorn crop, because all of a sudden like if you have a really hot year, all of a sudden that scrape may be 10 times more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have 2 dead years, all of a sudden that scrape may be dead. So like that's a multi-year process. I think of when you start adding, like a soft mass into the equation of particular spots or scrapes or whatever it may be. I think you got to like it's a multi-year thing to learn that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And honestly, um, there is another move that I think it needs to be made. I don't know. I'm so torn because of how it's not that thick, and maybe I'm just overthinking it. Maybe I do need to throw a sit at it. Maybe I don't need to move. Maybe I just play the passive game and like kind of maybe I go in and doctor up the scrape that's there right now that they destroyed. I mean, destroyed this scrape. Maybe I just play off of that, and I'm fall.
You got it.
The reason
You
why
got
I
to
don't
think.
want to do that is because I feel like that's what I do in the past, and I get the same result, and it's not the result I want.
Yeah, yeah. There's something to be said about those scrapes that they start and absolutely hammer themselves. Like there's something to that,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when we're not talking just about like a field edge or something. Like even though like Aaron's talking about this scrape being pretty open, it is still inside, like a field. It's still
Yes.
quite a ways off, like a row crop field. So there is something to be said, but like that's like how were the acorns in there this year? Were they plentiful or were they
Oh yeah.
none to be seen?
Oh yeah. There
Yeah.
was acorns
Okay.
everywhere in there. Yeah.
Okay. So like, let's just say like this 2022 season, there's tons of acorns in there. We don't know what this next fall will bring. It very
Right.
well could be nothing,
Right.
or it could be this same thing. So like, if there's no acorns in there, guess what? There's a super high probability that scrape isn't worth a damn.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's one of those things. It's a multi-year process, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I'm gonna actually do a here on Onyx. I'm gonna do a little see how far it is from the bedding.
Yeah. And
Real
it's
quick.
when you talked about that Riley script that we made, when you said that was a first for you about that coyote den, that's a first for me too, man. Like I've had, there's no doubt where there'll be like I'll hit like a window, a 3 to 5 day window, when all of a sudden you can see the coyotes have really like they're just in there a lot. Like they've moved into an area and they're like, man, I'm getting a lot of coyotes, because I'm telling you right now, those coyotes are checking scrapes too, because it's not coincidence that a coyote comes and stands right in that scrape, and next thing you know, it's one picture he's standing there, the next picture his nose is down in the scrape, the next
Mm-hmm.
picture hits his tail and he's leaving. Like I think they track deer out of the scrape sometimes, but
I agree.
I have never seen a coyote make a den right. I mean within spitting distance of a scrape. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, if that happens, yeah, if I'm a deer, I'm not going there either.
Yeah, and it definitely shifted the deer a good ways around. They actually did like a half moon shape. They'd still kind of come out of the bedding where they
Hmm.
normally would, but then it was kind of a half moon instead of like a straight line. So
Yeah.
I just did a line distance from the scrape that they've been hammering, that I've been wanting to move, to the bedding. It's 184 yards to the edge of the thick cover. That's why I was thinking like an 80-yard move will get me within possibly that 100-yard distance that it might buy me 15 minutes. Who knows?
Hmm.
Now, I will say the scrape from the row crop field is not far off of it. It is. I mean, we're talking 40 yards off
Okay.
the edge.
So it is pretty close then.
Yep, yep.
Yep.
And then on that field edge, we talk about field edge scrapes. On that field edge, there's like where the main trail comes out into the field off of that 40-yard scrape. There's like 6 scrapes destroyed on the field edge right there. And when you walk that field edge, there's no more sign like that. That is where they come out. That is where. So I feel like I found the main hub, the main highway. I just need to figure out where to set up on it, um, to be successful on it. So there's here it is, like the overthinking game. You got to figure out what you're gonna do. But I think I'm going to start. I'm gonna move. I'm gonna do that 80-yard move or so and build another scrape, and then just monitor both. With cameras. And I've got yesterday. I was telling you I updated all my cameras, so all the firmware and everything is updated. Cards are ready. I haven't spent $50,000 on batteries yet, but that's coming.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah, just trying to get everything ready. I want everything ready. I cleaned all the cameras, everything. They are ready. If I needed to go put cameras out tomorrow, they are ready to go. Just got to put batteries in them. So,
Yeah, that's a really great point, Aaron. Because as much as we're sitting here talking about scouting, and that's always usually priority one in the off season. Season 23 off season also means preparing your gear, planning, hunts. It
yep.
means making sure, like, if you're gonna, like I always say, if you're gonna run trail cameras, make them work for you. Don't half-ass it. Like, no shortcuts. Like, you're gonna put that out there for information. Do your best job at it.
Yeah, and one thing I didn't utilize last year was what I have in the past, and I just dropped the ball on it. I didn't put enough cameras out for the historical data that I wanted. I put a few out, but not as many as I should have. This year, we're going full regalia. We are,
Hmm.
and majority of those cameras are not going to be touched. Those are going to be SD card cameras that are literally going to soak, that are just
Yep.
going to sit there and soak. And I'm excited for that. I've got some goals wrote down, and you and I we're going to do a podcast, whenever coming into this next season and what our goals are looking like. I got a goal for next year, that I'm really going to try to hone in on and achieve, and that's it's going to be a challenge. Everybody out there might not think it is, but it's going to be a challenge for me. So I'm excited.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear them. But like when you just talked about how you dropped the ball last season about having like soaker SD card cameras. You know what I love about what you said right there though. Like, you learn from that.
Mhm.
Like, you realize that like, oh man, I I have these tools and I didn't use them. But I'm
Mhm.
gonna fix that next year. Like, that's the shit I love. I love when
Yep.
guys are like, guess what? I could have been better, and then the next year they go do things better. I love that.
Yep, that's definitely where I need to put majority of my focus. Everything else is absolutely dialed,
Hmm.
but that is where I need to put a lot of my focus. So, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what I had today. I was gonna bring up some betting that I found, but I mean we're a little lengthy on this, which is fine. But I don't think it's where we need to. I guess the 1 acre stuff. In closing. So the 1 acre, I want to start hinting on, like, I'm putting a little time into that. The other day, I put about 5 hours worth of work in there. I did some hinge cutting, a little bit, just to kind of create some slash cutting and create some more, um, just some barriers so I can possibly get into a stand if there's going to be deer in the 1 acre, where I can just kind of get in undetected. I mean, 1 acre's small. It's hard. So I did some of that, but the big thing was, and what I'm most excited about is, um, last year the farmer, his field would get backed up with water because going through the 1 acre is a runoff little stream, and they came through and they made, like, basically a truck path with a skid loader and like a mulching head on it. They went through the 1 acre and ruined a lot of the hinge cutting, which at first I was bummed, but then I'm like, you know what they just did? They just opened up like a freaking highway to heaven for a runway, or for some food. And that's a thing that I don't have come fall in there, and it's been one of the hindrances of I just don't have food in there. Now they have woody browse, but my thing is like there is going to be a carpet of green brassicas and clover in there now. So what I did is I had to go in there and cut some trees away, clear it out, but there was a whole bunch of leaves, and then there was about an inch worth of just mulch on the ground. And so I went in there with a leaf blower. It took me about 3 to 4 hours, and I leaf blowed everything away. Like I said, there was no snow, and I wanted to get good seed to soil because I didn't know if I'd have this opportunity to do it again. Because when I come in and frost seed, I want to throw it right on the ground, and I want good seed to soil. It's very rich, loamy, black soil in there, so I got no problem that it's gonna take off. It's a poor man's plot. I cannot get equipment back there because it's in the middle of a section, farm fields all around me. I can only walk stuff back there. So it's a poor man's plot. Stage 1 of the poor man's plot is complete. Stage 2 will be frost seeding and just letting her grow. So I'm filming that whole process. So that'll be going live on YouTube, on the Fall Podcast YouTube, which, by the way, if you guys haven't noticed, like I'm trying to put up these podcast video versions of them as well. I'm a little slow with it just because I got a lot going on. But Andy Mays just went up last night. So if you guys want to watch the video version of it, you're more than welcome to do that. Go over to the Fall Podcast, subscribe to it, the YouTube channel. Tell some people about it. Some of our One Giant Mistakes episodes are on there. I got to get more on there. But like I said, just a busy man, making excuses. Yeah. But I'm being run pretty thin. And then probably next week, the big announcement that I've been telling people, like hinting at, I can probably say next week. So, yeah, you guys will know more why everything is kind of hectic right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really looking forward to the 1 Acre project because that's something totally outside my norm. You know, like the little bit of habitat work, this and that. But what I love about it though is like even though you refer to it as the 1 acre and it's really small, like that's just another piece. Like you know, like you're not putting yourself in a box of I'm only hunting this 140 acre piece. Like if that 1 acre provides one hunt for you in a fall, a high percentage hunt, I don't care what size it is.
Yep.
And like when you sent me those videos the other day, I'm like, who's out with a leaf blower in the middle of February? But I love it. You know what I mean? Like I love it because it's like that's the stuff people don't see, but we get to talk about it and share about it and like you're videoing it, so I guess people will get to see it. But it's like that stuff matters in the fall.
Yeah.
Right now, the stuff you're doing right now can matter in the fall. And don't overlook those small pieces, man. Even if it's only good for one tree. All you need is one tree and then one correct animal to come through there, and your season could change.
Yeah, and I even picked out 2 trees that I'm going to prep and have, you know, for a saddle and everything. And I even went in there and leaf blowed trails to those trees and cut away all the brush and everything. So, like, right now it's a carpet of just dirt that I can be that last, you know, if it's that last 50 yards or so that I need to creep, like I can creep in there and be undetected. So that's another thing. I was like, while I'm here and I walked the leaf blower back a half mile. Like I'm ready to, I'm here. Why not do it? And if it works, it works. If not, you know, it should be better than what it would be, you know, because like you said, like once green up starts, like that's when my mindset starts changing to like walking on eggshells. I don't like pushing deer around. Like when green up's here, it's like I like to stay out. So
yeah, just add in another piece to your arsenal, buddy. It's good stuff.
For sure. Well, let's cut this loose. I appreciate you doing this. See another season 23 episode. We're almost done with the One Giant Mistakes. We got a couple more weeks of it. Next week is going to be Bryce Dickinson, I believe. Isn't it, Bryce?
Yep.
I think we're doing Bryce next week. Next Tuesday, Illinois Giant, the biggest buck that we've ever talked about on the podcast. So make sure you guys tune into that on Tuesday morning. And, with that being said, I guess we'll cut this loose. Thank you guys very much, and we will see you next time on the Fall Podcast.